And thank you very much for joining us here on PM Express. If you have not followed what has been happening in Ejura, well, this is the show that will break it down for you. We'd like to look at the bigger picture because there's a big picture that we need to be interrogating on the back of what has happened in Ejura. And that's why we are asking, how did we get here? The Ejura incident did not just happen. There was a bigger context in which that incident unfolded. And so we'll get into that for you very shortly. But what do we know so far? We know that some protesting youth of Ejura, etc., Idumasi, clashed with the military and the police, right? And this is a very important thing to note. In fact, there are some who are disputing the use of the word clash because they believe that it's not an exact descriptor of what happened. But indeed, to be fair, we will get into what the videos show. We'll get into some of the analysis of the video shortly. And then you can make up your own minds very shortly. The youth and the Ejura were demonstrating. Why? Because one of their own had been murdered. It's called Ibrahim Mohammed, also known popularly as Saka, by some unknown assailants. Now, the thing about this is those who know him say he's an activist, and I think that has been confirmed by all sides. MC himself had told us that he's been an activist for quite some time. But of course, when the Fix the Country campaign came along, he started his circulating his activism using that hashtag. So many saw him as one of those sympathetic to the Fix the Country campaign. Now, in the wake of the violence that we saw today, 2 people are dead, 4 in critical condition, still at a hospital there in Ejura receiving treatment. And that's one of the tragic things that happened today. How did this happen? We'll come to that shortly when we begin to analyze the footage. Now, who are those who were killed? And we're getting a bit more tonight on the identities of the people who were killed and why they were killed and how they died. Abdul Nasser Yusuf, the 25-year-old, was shot on the left shoulder into the chest. And this, according to the hospital's medical superintendent, who's been attending to the injured and, of course, the dead. Now, we also have Muntala Mohammed. He's a 26-year-old, we understand, was shot at the back through the chest and, of course, died from what we know. Now, we know that the response from the Ashanti Regional Police has been to say, we are investigating. What they tell us is that they've called for calm, and as the investigations continue, the military lieutenant, they claim, was also injured in this process. They are also investigating the murder of Ibrahim Mohammed, which really was the fuse that led to this protest that eventually led to the shooting that we saw. And we know security had now been reinforced in Ejura as a result of what has happened, right? Now, more than 10 protesters of the Fix the Country movement were arrested for demonstrating in front of the law called Complex in Accra. Now, this is important. Why? Because it's been 2 months since the Fix the Country protest started. Many have linked what has happened in Ejura to it. And so we could just looking back to what has been key, I guess, incidents since the Fix the Country popped up. We know they secured that famous court victory recently. We know that the court had been on their side when it comes to the protest. And that protest, we understand, is still outstanding, and we know that since the campaign, the government has been holding these regular Sunday briefings, right? So on the back of what happened today, some say what happened today is avoidable. But really, let's look at some of the footage that we and our men there, brave men who put themselves on the line today to bring us live coverage of this as it unfolded in Ejura. My colleague Rastos led the team, and this is the footage I want to show you. Here is the military guys who just arrived at the scene. They were the first responders, very well armed. You can see the men here firing as the crowd dispersed. I want you to pause this for me briefly because I want to show our viewers something. So now it's paused. You see all the military men are wielding their rifles, the vehicle. And you see the crowd there. Some of them are most running, some staring down the police, staring down the military. You'll see the police arrive shortly. So the military took the lead, and that is important. We're going to be analyzing this for you. The military took the lead and the police arrived, as you can see there. So the military first on the scene, Operation Calm Life and COVID safety on the scene. Now you can see that also, whilst this was unfolding, some members of the crowd were throwing missiles at the military, right? You see some of the projectiles being thrown, from the side as well. The military men, and I want you to keep an eye on this gentleman here. Keep this pause for me. Keep your eye on this military officer. I'm signaling out for you, holding his rifle at ready. Now, pause this for me here. You can see the police van now arriving, the policemen in tow. It is important to note that this is a civilian protest, and there was rioting, yes, there was protest happening, but is it appropriate to have the military lead? It's a key question we'll ask Professor Kwesieni. Is it appropriate to have the military lead? They arrive first, they take out their guns, and as you see, they begin to fire. At this moment, from our reporters, this was firing of warning shots. But here, pause it for me. Now, you see this military officer here. If you know anything about military maneuvers, this is a firing position. You aim and you fire. We're talking about protesters. Some of them, yes, as our reporters have said, were throwing stones. Some of them were throwing anything they have at the moving security officers. But why do you get into this position? And remember, they were firing live rounds, bullets that kill, not rubber bullets. So a military officer will not get into this position unless he's aiming at somebody. Question is, who was he aiming at, right, to get into this position? And he did this, this is not the only time this gentleman did what he did here, the military officer who knelt down. He did this aimed, and look at this officer too here, also going into that same position that we know military officers go in before they fire. To aid your accuracy of aiming, you have to put your knee there, and of course put this other leg there in that position, support your rifle, aim at the target, and fire. I mean, that needs to be, a lot of this needs to be explained. And this officer also appears to crouch in that position. Meanwhile, others ahead of him, the majority of the crowd seemed to be here. But then something else was happening in this direction. And if you watch the footage close, you see some items being thrown from here. So he gets in this position, aims, and appears to fire. He gets up, he goes down again. Pause it for me. This is the second time he goes down. Second time he goes down. I mean, I can say from where I am if he indeed fires. He appeared to do so the first occasion, goes down, and appears to do so again. I mean, a lot of questions in here. I mean, the story of this is the fact that 2 people are dead. And our reporters say he did not see any of the protesters wielding any firearm. Again, that's what the police have said. He did not see any of the police officers wield firearms. A lot of questions still unanswered. But then, let's proceed. We are seeing him there in this position as he again does that. Meanwhile, the police officers, whose job it is to primarily interface with the civilian population, were playing second fiddle in this unfolding situation. We're going to be analyzing this a bit more with security analyst Kwesieni, who is joining us. As we know, this has unfolded within a bigger context of the Fix the Country protest. At least there's a belief that a person who died, whose death led to this, was a member. But that's one of the things that we need to be delicate about, because as of now, nobody has established that whether his death was as the result of his advocacy or activism as part of the Fix the Country. Nobody has established that yet. All you can say is that indeed he was an activist, right, and that he was using the hashtag Fix the Country protest. And so there's a lot of questions. The IGP, we know, has been petitioned. We know the Interior Minister has asked for an investigation to happen. Worrying pictures. We're going to be getting into this for you. We are all over this tonight on PM Express. Just watch this. And the military officers there, at ready. And a lot of them still cocking their guns. Look at this. Pause this for me. Look at this officer here. Again, this is exactly what you do when your military man is under attack and is being fired upon. You take shelter behind any object you find, and then you aim your rifle towards your target. So that if the person who you're aiming at is firing back, you assume that the chairs in front of him will protect him. But is that the kind of situation they found themselves in, as in were they being fired upon to necessitate this posture that he aims at? There are two of them doing this. We'll look into that when we return from this break. Stay with me.
Not totally safe.
And thank you for staying with us here on PMX. There's a lot to get through for you tonight, and that's why I'm joined by Professor Kwesini. He's the Director of Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Also joining us tonight is Oliver Baker-Vomowo. He is obviously the convener of Fix the Country campaign, and his colleague Felicity Nelson also joined us. He's also a convener of the Fix the Country campaign. Also joining us tonight on this conversation. Gentlemen and lady, before I start, there's also another video I want to share with you of another side of this whole conversation based on what played out in Ejura today. This is another video that was captured
beyond the last line of the Swedish
today that I want to share. I want to share with our viewers. Again, I'll walk you through what we've seen in this particular video. You see a police van, a riot van with the one that dispenses with the water cannon, and you see. So that's what you see there. There's a police van. There's a whole team. There's a whole crowd pelting the van with stones and other missiles, anything they can find. The van, obviously, the police van tries to use the word flee. You can see the van there trying to spray the water at the crowd as they run after it with all manner of implements. They are children. You can see there. You can see adults also in the picture. All of them running after the van and throwing all manner of things at the van and etc. and running after it also. We've seen this other side of the story. I've shown you the first side of the story with the response that came on the back of that. You see that they still going after the van as it makes its way from this crowd. And so two sides to this. We've had the police side. We've also seen the videos. We've had the side of the protesters who are on the ground. Professor Enning, just strictly speaking on the videos that you've seen already, what's your own take on the first? Let's start with the conduct of the armed police officers and the military from the videos that we've shown just before the start. What are you reading into those videos?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, for crowd control or riot control purposes, you would need the police. It is the police that serves as the first line of action. Based on their assessments, even prior to the riot, if they think they cannot respond, they will normally ask for a backup. Now, the police are important in playing this role because they've been provided with training as to how to handle crowds. Let me make this point in passing, however, that one of the weakest aspects of law enforcement in Ghana relates to riot control. So most of the inquiries into police performance in Ghana have dealt with riot control. Now, when the police cannot handle the demonstrators, because of our peacekeeping experience, we now have a formed police unit that are trained to handle much more difficult situations. But the military are trained to do one thing, and that is what you've shown us in the video. So what we need to ask ourselves relates to who issued those orders, what was the threat assessment, what sort of understanding did the military have prior to their arrival? Because, Evans, it looks to me as if they are quite a number of failures here. First relates to the presence of the intelligence officers from the National Intelligence Bureau. Now, when this gentleman was beaten by either criminals or whoever, killed him and eventually died, the youth of Ejura had sought empathy and understanding. That, look, please help us, that we think people are using their positions to intimidate and to create trouble for us. Now, irrespective of the veracity of that statement, precisely because the individual who has been mentioned then sits on the Metropolitan or Municipal Security Council and has that authority and power to deploy with the backing of the council, either police officers or any other security force, that creates a bit of a problem. So the first video and the actions that we see raises issues of command and control, of professionalism, and of how to respond to an unarmed crowd. The second video that you show creates a disturbing picture of youth, kids who are furious, who think their lives are not worth living, and therefore they will take the risk of attacking, a police vehicle. The symbolism in that, when armed officials run away from unarmed civilians, is that order is beginning to break down. And it sends a very clear signal that were we to organize much better, we will be able to have more victories. So when we juxtapose the two, what the conclusion one can make is that we are heading towards a tipping point in which a combination of frustrations, a sense of exclusion, and an in-depth and a growing sense of anger and a willingness to strike a blow against the state, irrespective of the outcome, is beginning to bubble to the fore. Now, this is something that we need to look at, and we need to pull back from the brink. Because when unarmed civilians decide to attack representatives of the state, that is a specific, deliberate decision that those people have made. And they've made it because they feel that life is not worth living, that they need to make their voices heard, and they are willing to bear the consequences of their actions. That is dangerous, and that sends a signal, not only to us in this country alone, it sends a signal to those in our contiguous states who have been looking for opportunities for a chink in the armor to be able to hurt us. Ejura probably epitomizes a shift in civil security relations in this country. And I think it is a very unfortunate day in the democracy that we have built, or that we are seeking to build and embed in this country.
Oliver, you today, your group, and I guess also the Economic Fighters League petitioned the IGP. What was the point of that petition?
I'll come to address the point or pointlessness of that petition in a minute. But before that, I want to take issue with some of the things I've been hearing today. Professor Enian, for instance, talks about a riot, and maybe the language is used loosely, but a riot is a violent disturbance of the peace by the crowd. That's the official meaning of what a riot is. Now, at which point in your videos did you see violent public disturbance before the police intervened. And I asked you again deliberately to point out when you're saying that the crowd was violent. He's determined again that
just on that. I mean, I can only tell you what our reporters who were on the ground had reported and what the videos show. I mean, we saw before the military anything, but the second one I showed, you saw the police van, the route van, the water.
No, hold on. I think you're misplacing what I'm saying. I'm saying that the police said they went in to quell a riot, which implies that the riot was in progress before the police arrived. You cannot show a police van as the evidence of the riot. So let's be clear on that.
I was coming to that substantive point. I mean, from what our reporters again tell us, this was a procession on the back of the burial of Saka. I mean, the man who unfortunately was killed. And in that procession, some of the youth in that procession, of course, angry and upset that a colleague and friend of theirs had died, blocked roads. And it was then that the police then, of course, were called in to deal with that situation. That is
so a blockage of the road, not a riot.
No, but I mean,
I'll jump to the other ideas.
But you know, Oliver, you know, I mean,
I am also drawing attention to this because your language has been misleading.
No. I mean,
allow me I know it's your platform. You can continue however you want it. But I think that when we are being deliberately obtuse, or whether for right or wrong reasons, or because we are ill-informed, it is important that those are also called out.
Yeah, I mean, of
because
course.
we have done nothing in this conversation but to cast Ejura as some sort of special event which epitomizes a break of law and whatnot, rather than call proper attention to the fact that this is nothing but the playbook of how security forces have behaved. And so I'm drawing attention to that. And I'll draw significant more of that attention to certain things which have been said on the platform.
Yeah, I mean, but that you need to acknowledge that point. You've come to the word of riots.
He said procession. He said procession.
Yeah, but I just indicated.
A procession is not a riot.
Baker, you are a lawyer. You know that you know that processions. We have the Public Order Act. If you start blocking roads, there's no justification what happened.
A procession, whether under the Public Order Act or not, is not a riot. We have a tendency in this country to confuse a demonstration, a procession, a protest with riots. And these are not the same things.
When you go on a procession, it's a procession. When you block roads, it turns into something else. It's not lawful. A procession, obviously, the law allows that if you satisfy the legal remit. But once you start blocking roads, you then start straying into other people's rights, because then you are blocking the road. That turns into law. It's not a law and order situation that the police need to restore. The roads have to be open for people to move. That is where the descriptions come in. Can we move on to the other issues that you have?
I am not intended to move on because you have again mischaracterized what I'm saying. A blockage of a road is not a riot. If you think that is illegal, call it illegal blockage of the road. Do not use the words riot because they paint a different picture. Again, Christine has talked about that the fact that we've seen kids following a police van means that they have determined for themselves that lives are not worth living. Kids in a republic made that determination for themselves that their own lives are not worth living. These are kids of poor people. If these were rich people's kids, we would be saying that they have determined for themselves that their lives are not worth living. You have talked about...
I've said that. Look, I think this conversation
is making your point.
Your attitude just doesn't make this discussion worth it.
So this is about attitude. This is about calling you a function.
Oliver,
let me say a very big thank you. And then
this is intellectually maturity, to be honest. If you feel like this is the reason why you do the program,
Oliver, you cannot use words like that on my show. As simple as that.
Which words?
No, you cannot say intellectual immaturity. You can't do that. I mean, you cannot. Wait, Oliver, listen to me. You started when, in fact, you're quoting Professor Inning out of context. When you say that he said, excuse me, we all listen to him. I understand. I understand. With the context in which he was speaking was not what you are currently portraying. He didn't say in the derogatory manner to say that their lives were not worth it. He was making a bigger point. about people who feel frustrated with the system, that they believe that at this moment we can take on armed police officers in spite of knowing that that could lead to consequences for our lives. He was making a bigger point, and I wonder why you skew that into making it sound as if he was saying he's my guest. So
if you prefer it,
you cannot do that.
But see, and it's on the platform himself. He spoke and all of us listened.
Yeah.
I wrote down his words.
Yeah,
he said that.
But he said it in a context.
What
you cannot take that.
What you're saying.
He said a lot of things.
You are putting your own reading on
No, you are. And I think we need to be.
You are not then. You are objective and fair, but I am putting a different interpretation to it. Is that what you're saying?
No, I am the moderator.
So let me make my point. If
but you can't make your point without sounding. Because you say it's an intellectual exercise. So don't call people names.
Let's do the intellectual exercise.
Don't call people names. Just make your point.
Let's make the intellectual exercise. It says that this shows that kids have determined that their lives are not worth living. Now, anybody, and I'm saying this on record again, anybody can claim this back and see whether I have misquoted him or taken him out of context. Now, you have also talked about clash, and you said you were going to show us the clash. You said that projectile or missiles, your words, were being thrown again at the police. Missiles. Now, missile is a guided rocket, which is an airborne range weapon capable of self-propelled flight. If you see a missile,
Oliver. Again, Oliver. No. Wait. Let's have. Wait.
We're having a conversation.
Wait. No. This is not a conversation. You're beginning to. I think you're trivializing a lot of issues. Wait.
Calling this a clash and claiming that missiles have been.
Oliver.
Right.
Oliver. In regular use of descriptions when it comes to riots, protests, etc. When it's described, listen, let me make my point. When it's described that people were throwing objects and missiles, your definition of missile is what we know as a technical definition. It also applies to anything. If a person is throwing stone, it's just a broad descriptor of everything else that people in the protest might throw. So for you to take that and put it out and say, I was describing them as having technical ballistic missiles that were thrown. Yes. I mean, that everybody also listens and knows these descriptions. That's not what it is.
No, they do not, because it muddies the waters.
Now, excuse me.
You are competent in the English language.
Excuse me.
Allow me to be able to make them.
No, you can't. You cannot make points.
With them,
you cannot misrepresent.
I am not misrepresenting.
You cannot misrepresent people on the show and claim that that's what you're saying.
To clarify.
No, you can't.
By your use of missile, you are not referring to the technical language of
No. Everybody. I think everybody who listens to the show knows what I meant.
Nobody understands. No, I do not understand it, and I'm listening to you.
Okay, so now you understand.
Non-technical term.
Now you understand.
Then you will have the opportunity to respond.
Oliver, so now you understand.
I haven't even made my point.
So now you understand.
You do not want me to.
So let's proceed.
You do not want me to make the point.
I really wish you can go to the substantive points of the conversation question.
Substantive points, because people's life are at stake. Civilian lives and the right to protest and right to demonstrate is at stake. Because when we militarize the conversation about how rights are exercised, we put people's life at risk. These are substantive issues with a democracy. And I make this point not to be pedestrian. I make this point not to call anybody out or to insult anybody or ask if any says it's my attitude problem. This is not about that. That is about respecting constitutional right and that the kind of language we use puts people's lives in jeopardy. Now, we have today, with the Economic Fighters League, submitted a letter to the Inspector General of Police. And we've requested for the audience, because we do believe that these issues need to be escalated at the highest level. And we say that when they say that these issues need to be escalated at the highest level, I mean that the acts we have seen are evidence of state-sponsored violence that offends our constitution and which makes mockery of our claims of being a democracy. And we think that in his authority as the highest law enforcement officer, that this must be given the necessary gravity and diligence that we haven't seen applied to the conversation. And so this is what we are hoping for. But in that meeting, we are going to be requesting him to formally resign. And he's not the only person who has failed, because we do think that accountability at the highest level must be brought to the conversation. Now, Professor Kwesi will talk about this, because he does have the expertise in talking about these issues, and he has said so historically. that we have consistently seen failures in our national security vis-a-vis how they deal with crowds when they meet them. It has always resulted in violence against the crowds. And we have seen them go on and claim that machetes, firearms, and whatnot. We want an independent process, which we do not believe that persons at the highest level hold that accountability, credibility to be to lead that process. And that's why we submitted that petition.
Okay. Well, what sort of response did you get when you submitted that petition? Did you get a positive response?
Well, it's a letter requesting for an audience with the Inspector General of Police. Traditionally, and I don't know why we allow this in this country, when you submit a request to the police, they do not formally acknowledge receipt. They tell you it's not our practice, and they do not do so. But what we have done consistently is that when we do release the letter, we will put that public. Because, and again, you seem to be rolling your eyes at this, but I'm saying this on record because Ernesto Yeboah, when he was arrested for the vigil, the police claimed he hadn't notified them. But in fact, what they do is, and we have seen the same thing, when we submitted the request for them to investigate the offenses related to Sir John's funeral, that they refused to acknowledge receipts. And so this is something which is consistent with police practice. So we are hoping that this letter, as we release it to the public domain, that the IGP gets knowledge of it and honors that request for an audience.
Okay. I mean, Professor Henning, I hope you're still on, by the way. For me, it's important to bring in the Fix the Country thing because I think what happened in Ejura it can be suited within the bigger, broader context of all the agitation. I think you mentioned it, that it's, if you take it as an isolated incident, you'll probably be misreading it. And it goes also into going forward, how all this then should be handled, because the trigger, as we know, was the killing of this gentleman who many linked to the campaign. And as a result of that, then we have the issues about the crowd and the police reacting to it. In terms of dealing with the sophisticated delicacy in which this is all tilted and balanced now, and we've heard Oliver, I guess, express that, right? How important, I heard you say on my show tonight that this is one of those things that if not handled properly, could serve as a spark for something more dangerous and almost an explosion.
Evans, I'm still here.
Yes.
You know, I've been abused, threatened, shot at, imprisoned. So disparaging remarks don't hurt me. I think your viewers will make their own decisions and choices. But there's a bigger picture here. Okay, and the bigger picture is that I've been looking at what has happened at Ejura over a long period of time. This is not only, it could have happened in any other town because the foundations for the type of response, the anger that we've seen, this desire to confront an armored vehicle, okay, with bare hands, stones, sticks, it epitomizes the frustration, the dismissiveness, the unwillingness to show empathy and understanding when people feel they are not part of a society that they live in. And Evans, I think you and I have had this conversation over years of firearms violence, of crime that is unresolved and people dismissed when they complain. And Oliver himself has said this, that, you know, post some funeral that they made some request, that, you know, no responses came. Okay, now, when the state and its representatives over time signal to people that they don't matter, it contributes to building frustration. Frustration that we are seeing manifesting in more violence in society from the lowest level, increasingly to attacking representatives of the state and indications of the state's presence anywhere. And when people decide willingly to strike a blow against the state, and Oliver, this is the point I was trying to make. It's not because somebody has told them their lives are not worth living. No, they themselves have decided. And look, I want something better for myself. But the opportunity to do that is not there, whether peacefully or otherwise. And particularly when a representative individual or a group that has given me hope has also been brutalized, then I'll stand up and fight. And therein lies the danger and the possibility that this can spread, that it can become a conflagration. Because the frustrations that we've seen in Ejura probably are found in more than 1,000 towns in this country. Because what happened in Ejura, the frustrations of the youth and those who came forward that we've seen, is seen everywhere else. The spark that led to Ejura might not be the same spark that happens in town B or town C. It might just be a little quarrel over the price of fish in a market. Okay, so we are heading towards a tipping point, but the reality of tipping points is that we don't know what tips over people's anger and people's frustrations. And that is why I'm arguing that let's be bold enough, and I'm hoping that, Oliver, somebody will read your letter and give you a hearing, you and your team, and then you can put forward your concerns. Because Ejura is only a symbolic representation of the frustrations across this country. Quite a number of our own leaders have spoken about youth frustrations, unemployment, as a toxic mix. And Ejura has demonstrated that we've now moved from the rhetoric of seeing to be concerned about this sense of exclusion, the rhetoric of a middle-income country in which there's growth, but there's little development that trickles down to ordinary people. That frustration is what we have seen in Ejura. And that frustration is across this country. And we need to say, look, how do we improve our policing so that it doesn't tip over these aspects of people's frustrations? But Evans, what has happened in Ejura is also part of an intelligence failure. Because when this individual died, the people of Ejura sought for empathy. They mentioned names of people that they thought were part of their problems. Okay, and whoever does the intelligence assessments and reports ought to have said, my bosses, look here, based on what I'm hearing and the sense of frustration and building anger, probably let some people come here and have a conversation. Okay, that did not happen until people felt there was nowhere they could turn. And that frustration is what we have seen having tipped over. I've just got some message that a third person has died. I mean, I don't know. I haven't been able to verify it. Verify it. But something must be done to calm this situation. There is hurt, there is pain, and dealing with emotional anger is different from dealing with other flashes of irritation, frustration, because emotional anger and pain cuts very deep and pulling people back from the brink when they've decided that, look, I don't have anywhere else to turn to. And therefore, the only way forward is to move towards those I perceive as my oppressors, those who are excluding me from what ought to be my right. I think Oliver spoke about right, I think he used that word. Okay, so Ejura is just one of a possible 1,000 towns where the basis for what has exploded are also present.
Yeah.
We need to look at things very carefully.
I want to bring in Felicity on this. Felicity Nelson with the Fix the Country also, and she's been on the line with us. And Felicity, I want to tap into something that Dr. Professor Inning just mentioned there about the Ejura being almost like a symbol of the anger and the frustration that, of course, we've seen reflected, I guess, most eloquently through the Fix the Country campaign. I mean, with what had just happened there, looking at the triggers that led to that, how is that going to shape the campaign going forward? I mean, seeing that now within the broader context of the concerns that you've been raising for the last 2 months, is led to violence, or at least there have been concerns that had led to one of your own, killed. The police is still investigating the cause of that. I mean, but there are undertones there. Does that in any way affect or influence the approach going forward from the Fix the Country?
Not necessarily, because for a lot of us, and at least for me, I've never been under illusions when it comes to the level of violence that people who want to speak up against the system face. I've seen people like Ahmed Swale. I saw how Manasseh was literally hounded out of the country. You see these. So for me, nothing has really changed. But I just wanted to kind of comment because we're having this conversation, and Dr. Inning spoke widely about, and it seemed like his analysis was tilted towards like the security services, and it's like, oh, people striking back at the state. But there was very little in his analysis when it came to the fact that, the police brutality is the norm in this country. We saw what happened in Asawase. We saw the police release a statement. They killed 7 people, released a statement, calling them armed robbers. And the only reason why that area was even investigated is because it's a political hotspot for both parties. And I feel like that's what influenced the fact that they even bothered to investigate what really happened. And in the end, we found out that they didn't even shoot a single shot, but then they were killed by police. You see videos of police slapping people. There's reports of police hurting people. Today we saw a video. The armed men, they were soldiers. They came out of the car and they started shooting. Those were not warning shots. They were shooting into the crowd. In that crowd, you could literally see children, people that looked about 10 years old, 8-year-olds, indiscriminate shooting. And the reason they can act like that is because they live in a country where they know that they will not be held accountable, where we expect that when you are in a position of authority, like you're a policeman or you're a soldier, you can do as you please. And we dare not stand up against you, we dare not speak up against you. But why do we not have this sense that we need to de-escalate situations? A situation like this could have been de-escalated, but you go in, guns blazing, and then you show a video of them throwing stones at the tanker, and you want to demonstrate how that suddenly becomes a clash. It is not a clash, because you'll find that a lot of these young men who are probably involved in this violence today, who are throwing stones, have probably been harassed by the police at some point, have felt that their voices. Literally, you find that when people want anything to be solved in this country, you find that they won't start burning tires and block roads, because it's literally the only way for a lot of people, that's the only way they know their voices will finally be heard. That's the only way they can get attention. Because there's very little engagement with young people, very little engagement with like members of the community, people who are not in positions of power, very little engagement. So if anything happens, look how many days ago was Haka assaulted, and there's been video recordings of people who are apparently linked to the MC in the area who are threatening him to stop his activism and all of that. What has happened? Have those people been arrested? So we wait, because people are frustrated, because people are sick and tired of a system that doesn't listen to them, a system that tells them that their lives mean nothing. It's not that they think their lives mean nothing. Police kill people in cold blood and they're not held accountable. So it's not like they don't think their lives mean nothing. Kaka has been killed. People get killed all the time by the police, and very few people these people that were killed today, 3 right now, we know 2 are dead definitely. What is going to actually happen? You know, if you read the police statement is basically justifying the violence. There's no accountability, no sense that they completely acted. You know, there's something called reasonable force. And do we think that they use reasonable force today? When people are using things like stones and so-called machetes, shooting guns, shooting, firing into a crowd, is that reasonable force? Is that how to control a crowd? And you kept saying that, oh, it doesn't matter, the words don't matter, but language absolutely does matter. Because when you start using words like missiles, and you might think, oh, it's a general use, but if it's general use, why not use stones? Why use the word missiles? Once you start projecting that image, you start letting people think that there's this group of, vigilantes or this extremely militarized young people who are acting in this way. And then suddenly public sentiment and even the level of support and sympathy, right, that they need to get, they're not going to get that because people think, well, they're just some violent thugs. And that's why language is extremely important. And that's why we need to put that. For me, this entire conversation needs to be about how are we going to ensure that those people whose lives are lost, somebody is held responsible. Who gave the order to shoot into a crowd? Some of the people were shot from the back, which demonstrates that they were running away. So when you shoot someone in the back, that means that's someone who was getting away from you or who was not facing you. So clearly, in that instance, where is the threat? Where's the imminent threat that you need to shoot in that manner? Look at the way the soldiers were standing there firing, and what is going on in this country? I literally, it felt like I was watching like a Boko Haram, has gone into a village and started shooting around. That's what it looked like.
Let me bring in Oliver. Oliver, very finally, the police have announced today, and this is just in a second because we just need to wrap up. They've announced today an investigation. We also heard from the Interior Minister who says that he wants a full probe into this matter. Parliament has also joined it. Are these enough for you, or you want to see something more?
First of all, let me make a point. Professor Enin and I were on the same faculty at the Fianna Peacekeeping Training Center. And knowing somebody who doesn't run away from the debate and vigorous disagreement. So it's a bit surprising to me that he had said that my disagreement with his choice of words for some reason why he was going to leave. And that's why I made the comments I made, and I want to put that on record. I have never disagreed with his views generally.
I'm sorry, Oliver. I don't have time. I don't have time. And I asked you a direct question.
In the interest of the lack of time that you have, I think that this is the most important point. Because on the other issue of what they are claiming, I'm not going to deal with claims. I don't think it's important and worthwhile
my question is
that Professor Kwesi's voice in this conversation is more important. And I want to make clear that even when we disagree, let's disagree passionately.
Oliver, my question to you was, there's been an announcement.
Trivializing the lives of individuals.
Oliver, my question to you was, the police say they're going to investigate this. Is that something that you accept, or you think that there's something more that needs to be done?
I do know that the police have arrested us and still having charges. Today, we asked them that in light of what's happened, could we postpone the meeting they had access to come to on Monday, which we went, and they said they were not ready and asked us to come tomorrow. We asked them to postpone it, they refused and insisted that our activists need to still report there at 9 a.m. That is what I know the police are doing to us, and they're persecuting us as we speak, and that's all I know.
Okay, thank you, Oliver. Thank you, Felicity. Prof, I'm grateful that you joined us. Enjoy the rest of it, but I'm pretty sure tomorrow we'll get to know the latest. As Dr. Ening had indicated, that 4 more people are in critical condition. We'll bring you the latest on that in our subsequent bulletins.